Have you ever wondered why two gardeners can plant potatoes in the same village, using similar soil, similar rainfall, and even the same potato variety, yet one harvests only a few small tubers, while the other fills basket after basket with large, healthy potatoes? The answer often isn't fertilizer. It isn't expensive equipment. And it isn't luck. One of the biggest differences is something many people overlook completely: planting at exactly the right time. Plant potatoes too early, and cold soil slows growth, increases the risk of rot, and weakens the plants before they even begin. Plant too late, and summer heat may interrupt tuber development, reducing both size and total yield. The planting date influences almost everything that follows, from germination and root development to disease resistance, tuber formation, and final harvest weight. Experienced potato growers know that timing is not simply about the calendar. It's about understanding soil conditions, temperature, moisture, and how the potato plant grows beneath the surface, where most of the important work happens out of sight. In this video, you'll learn exactly when potatoes should be planted for maximum harvest, how to recognize perfect planting conditions without guessing, and the proven techniques used by successful gardeners and commercial growers to consistently produce bigger, healthier crops. By the end, you'll know how to choose the ideal planting window for your own climate and avoid the common mistakes that quietly reduce yields every single year. Let's begin with the most important principle of all. Potatoes don't care what month it is. They care about soil temperature. Many beginners look at a calendar and decide that because it's March, April, or May, it's automatically time to plant. But soil warms at different rates every year depending on weather, sunlight, rainfall, soil type, and location. The same calendar date can provide perfect conditions one year and poor conditions the next. That's why experienced growers pay much more attention to the soil than to the calendar. The ideal soil temperature for planting potatoes is generally between 45 and 50 degrees Fahrenheit, or about 7 to 10 degrees Celsius, measured approximately 4 inches below the surface. At this temperature, seed potatoes begin developing roots steadily while minimizing the risk of cold damage. When soil is colder than this, growth slows dramatically. Instead of producing roots, seed potatoes may simply sit underground for weeks. During that time, they become much more vulnerable to fungal diseases, bacterial decay, and insect damage. Cold, wet soil is especially dangerous because excess moisture combines with low temperatures to create ideal conditions for seed rot. Many disappointing potato harvests begin long before any leaves appear above ground. Here's an interesting fact. A potato begins producing roots before shoots emerge. That hidden underground development determines how vigorously the plant will grow throughout the season. Healthy roots support stronger stems, larger leaf canopies, and eventually more tubers. Weak root development almost always limits harvest potential later. Now consider the opposite problem. Some gardeners wait until the weather feels comfortably warm. Unfortunately, by then soil temperatures may already be climbing beyond the ideal range in many regions. Warm soil encourages rapid emergence, but excessive heat later in the season reduces tuber formation. Potatoes thrive during relatively cool growing conditions. The underground tubers develop best when soil temperatures remain moderate. Once soil temperatures become consistently high, the plant shifts more energy toward maintaining foliage rather than expanding tubers. This is one reason early planting, under suitable soil conditions, often produces the largest harvests. Notice the difference. Not early according to the calendar. Early according to the soil. That distinction matters enormously. So how can you tell whether your soil is ready? The simplest method is using a soil thermometer. Insert it about 4 inches deep early in the morning for several consecutive days. Average the readings rather than relying on a single measurement. If temperatures remain consistently above 45 degrees Fahrenheit and the soil is workable, planting conditions are usually favorable. But even without a thermometer, experienced gardeners look for several practical signs. The soil should crumble easily rather than sticking together in heavy wet clumps. If squeezing a handful forms a sticky ball that refuses to break apart, it's still too wet. Planting under those conditions often leads to compacted soil around the seed pieces, limiting oxygen availability and slowing early growth. Healthy potato roots require both moisture and oxygen. Good soil provides both. Here's another useful tip. Walk across your garden after rainfall. If water stands in puddles for hours or days, drainage needs improvement before planting. Potatoes dislike waterlogged conditions far more than many people realize. Poor drainage is one of the fastest ways to reduce yield. Successful growers often improve heavy soils by incorporating well-decomposed compost months before planting. Organic matter improves drainage in clay while increasing water retention in sandy soils. It also feeds beneficial soil organisms that help release nutrients gradually throughout the season. That brings us to soil preparation. Many people focus almost entirely on fertilizers while overlooking soil structure. Yet healthy soil structure is often more important than adding extra nutrients. Potatoes develop underground. Loose, well-aerated soil allows tubers to expand freely into smooth, uniform potatoes. Compacted soil restricts expansion, leading to smaller, misshapen harvests. Before planting, loosen soil to a depth of at least 8 to 12 inches. Avoid working soil when excessively wet because this destroys soil structure and creates long-lasting compaction. If compost is available, incorporate several inches evenly across the planting area. Well-rotted organic matter improves fertility while supporting healthy microbial activity. Fresh manure, however, should generally be avoided immediately before planting. It may encourage excessive leafy growth while increasing the risk of certain diseases and producing rough tubers. Balanced nutrition is equally important. Potatoes require adequate phosphorus for root development and potassium for tuber formation and overall plant health. Too much nitrogen, especially early in the season, often produces lush green foliage at the expense of tuber production. Many gardeners mistake enormous leafy plants for future heavy harvests. In reality, excessive nitrogen frequently reduces potato yields. Healthy leaves matter, but balanced growth matters even more. Now let's discuss seed potatoes. This is another area where planting success begins long before digging the first hole. Never assume that any grocery store potato makes suitable planting material. Commercial table potatoes are often treated to suppress sprouting during storage. Even untreated potatoes may carry diseases that spread throughout your garden. Certified seed potatoes are specifically produced for planting. They undergo inspection for major diseases and generally provide much more reliable results. Healthy planting material gives every plant a stronger start. Think of it this way. You can prepare perfect soil, provide ideal moisture, and plant at exactly the right temperature. But if the seed potato is weak or diseased, the harvest will always be limited. Large seed potatoes may be planted whole or cut into pieces, provided each piece contains at least 1 or 2 healthy eyes. If cutting seed potatoes, allow the cut surfaces to dry and heal for several days before planting. This protective layer reduces the chance of rot after planting. Now let's look at one of the simplest ways to speed early growth. Pre-sprouting, often called chitting. Instead of planting dormant potatoes directly from storage, place them in a cool, bright location. Several weeks before planting. Short, sturdy green shoots begin developing from the eyes. When planted, these potatoes emerge faster than dormant ones. Earlier emergence often means stronger plants, quicker canopy development, better weed suppression, and in many climates, higher yields. The key is producing compact sprouts rather than long white shoots. Long fragile sprouts break easily during planting. Bright indirect light encourages sturdy development. Here's an interesting observation from experienced growers. Fields planted with properly chipped seed potatoes often appear greener and more uniform earlier in the season than fields planted with completely dormant seed. That uniformity makes crop management much easier. Now let's discuss regional planting schedules. Because climate varies enormously, calendar dates differ widely. In warmer regions where winters are mild, potatoes are often planted in late winter or very early spring before intense summer heat arrives. In temperate climates, planting usually occurs during spring after soils warm sufficiently. In colder northern regions or higher elevations, planting may be delayed until late spring because soils remain cold much longer. This is exactly why copying another gardener's planting date without considering local conditions often leads to disappointment. Instead, learn your local weather patterns. Observe average last frost dates. Monitor soil temperatures. Watch how quickly your garden dries after snowmelt or spring rains. Successful growers combine all these observations rather than relying on a single date. Here's another practical tip. Keep simple garden notes every year. Record planting dates, soil temperature, rainfall, emergence dates, flowering time, and harvest. Results. Within a few seasons you'll develop an accurate planting guide tailored specifically to your own location. No general recommendation can replace information collected from your own garden. Now let's talk about planting depth. Many beginners either bury seed potatoes far too deeply or leave them too close to the surface. Generally, planting about 4 to 6 inches deep provides excellent results for most gardens. This depth protects developing shoots while allowing emergence without excessive energy loss. Spacing also influences harvest size. Crowded plants compete for water, nutrients, and sunlight. Wider spacing usually produces fewer but larger potatoes. Closer spacing often produces more potatoes overall but of smaller average size. For many home gardens, spacing seed pieces around 12 inches apart within rows and allowing approximately 30 to 36 inches between rows provides an excellent balance between productivity and ease of maintenance. Adequate spacing also improves airflow, reducing disease pressure later in the season. Now let's examine moisture management. One common mistake is overwatering immediately after planting. Remember, seed potatoes haven't yet developed active root systems. Excess water fills soil pores, limiting oxygen and increasing the risk of decay. Ideally, soil should remain evenly moist but never saturated. Once shoots emerge and root systems expand, water becomes increasingly important. Consistent moisture supports steady growth and helps developing tubers expand evenly. Large fluctuations between drought and heavy watering may lead to cracked potatoes, uneven growth, or reduced yields. Rainfall also plays an important role. Potatoes generally perform best when moderate rainfall is distributed consistently throughout the growing season. Long dry periods followed by excessive rain create stress that limits production. If irrigation is available, watering deeply and less frequently encourages stronger root systems. Compared with frequent shallow watering. Let's talk about sunlight. Potatoes need abundant sunlight to fuel photosynthesis. Those green leaves act like solar panels, producing the energy that eventually becomes stored inside underground tubers. Shaded plants almost always produce smaller harvests because less sunlight means less energy available for tuber growth. Aim for locations receiving at least 6 to 8 hours of direct sunlight each day. Now comes one of the most overlooked techniques in potato growing: hilling. As potato plants grow, gradually pull loose soil around the stems, creating small ridges. This simple practice provides several major benefits. First, it prevents developing potatoes from becoming exposed to sunlight. Sunlight turns potatoes green by increasing chlorophyll production while also encouraging glycoalkaloid accumulation, making them unsuitable for eating. Second, hilling provides additional space where new tubers can develop. Third, it suppresses weeds while helping conserve soil moisture. Most growers hill potatoes once plants reach about 6 to 8 inches tall, then repeat the process several weeks later as growth continues. Avoid burying the entire plant. Leave the upper leaves exposed so photosynthesis continues efficiently. Here's a surprising fact. Potatoes don't actually grow from the roots themselves. They develop from underground stems called stolons. These stolons emerge from the lower stem, then swell into tubers under favorable conditions. Understanding this explains why hilling increases production. More protected underground stem often means more opportunity for stolon development. Now let's discuss potato varieties. Not all potatoes grow the same way. Early season varieties mature quickly, often producing harvests within about 70 to 90 days. These are excellent for gardeners wanting fresh new potatoes early in summer. However, because they grow for a shorter period, total yields may sometimes be smaller than later. Varieties. Mid-season potatoes balance maturity speed with productivity. They often provide reliable harvests for many home gardeners. Late-season varieties require the longest growing period but frequently produce the largest storage. Harvests when climate allows. Because they remain in the ground longer, planting at the correct time becomes even more important. Late planting shortens their growing season and reduces their full yield potential. When selecting varieties, always consider the length of your local growing season. A variety requiring 120 days cannot reach maximum potential if frost arrives after only 90 frost-free days. Matching variety to climate is one of the smartest decisions any gardener can make. Let's review several common mistakes that reduce harvests. Planting into cold, waterlogged soil. Using diseased or poor-quality seed potatoes. Applying excessive nitrogen fertilizer. Ignoring soil drainage. Overcrowding plants. Skipping hilling. Allowing severe drought during tuber formation. Choosing varieties unsuited to the local climate. Each mistake alone can noticeably reduce production. Combined together, they may cut yields dramatically. Here's another practical insight from experienced growers. Uniform emergence usually leads to more uniform harvests. Plants emerging weeks apart compete differently for sunlight and resources. Using high-quality seed, proper soil temperature, and pre-sprouting helps create much more even crop development. Now consider how weather influences potatoes after planting. Cool days and moderate temperatures encourage vigorous foliage growth early. Later, stable moisture and moderate soil temperatures support steady tuber enlargement. Extreme heat, prolonged drought, or waterlogged conditions interrupt these processes. While weather cannot be controlled, choosing the correct planting date helps position the crop so its most important growth stages occur during the most favorable part of the season. This is exactly why planting timing has such a powerful influence on final yield. Experienced farmers don't simply plant when they're available. They plant when the crop has the greatest chance of experiencing ideal conditions throughout its life cycle. That's a completely different way of thinking. Here's one final practical tip that many successful gardeners follow every season. Instead of planting every seed potato on one day, divide the planting over 1 to 2 weeks if weather conditions remain suitable. This slightly staggered approach reduces the risk that an unexpected cold spell, heavy rain, or other weather event affects the entire crop at once. It also spreads harvest over a longer period. Before we finish, let's bring everything together. If you remember only a few principles from this video, make them these. Don't plant according to the calendar. Plant according to soil conditions. Wait until soil temperatures consistently reach around 45 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit and the ground is workable but not waterlogged. Prepare loose, fertile, well-drained soil rich in organic matter. Choose certified, healthy seed potatoes. Pre-sprout them whenever possible. Plant at the proper depth and spacing. Maintain even moisture throughout the season. Hill plants as they grow. Select varieties suited to your climate and growing season. Most importantly, observe your own garden every year. The soil, weather, and plants provide far better guidance than any calendar ever can. When planting time matches soil temperature, moisture, variety selection, and local climate, potatoes reward that careful timing with vigorous growth, healthy plants, larger tubers, and dramatically bigger harvests. The biggest potato harvests rarely come from secret tricks. They come from understanding the plant's needs and giving it exactly what it requires at exactly the right time. Master that timing, and every growing season becomes another opportunity to harvest baskets full of healthy, beautiful potatoes from the very same garden.